Bullshit.
Pretend for a moment we've entered a parallel universe, free of bullshit and full of bold solutions. That's what the No BS show's all about. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Let's cut the bullshit. We're with Loriann Putzier, the president and co-founder of IntegraCare Corporation, a company that owns and manages 12 senior living communities in Pennsylvania and Maryland. And this is the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. When it comes to messaging, I mentioned in the Cut the Bullshit rant in today's show that we have to understand both our why, our reason for being, and our customers' why, their reason for buying. We then need to crystallize that into one big idea, one memorable message or theme that makes an emotional impact on our target audiences. With Loriann today, she's been talking a lot about how the employees drive the organization at IntegraCare, and I've always found that to be a unique approach, and it's fascinating because when you started the company, that was a difficult message to convey, and you found a way to convey it, and it goes back to your mission statement, which I think is IntegraCare's big idea. Walk through that for us.
It's the mission statement is really the three-dimensional focus, but simplified, it's a good place to live because it's a good place to work. And really what that is trying to get at is that if we create a good work experience, perhaps then we're going to have better retention of the hourly workforce. Better retention then results in better quality and better care to the senior who's living in our community. And if that senior, and seniors are no different than the rest of us, they don't like a lot of change. So if there's turnover, that creates turmoil. Where if I'm seeing those same caregivers, those same staff in the dining room, that's a comforting feeling, and therefore I can be comfortable in my home. So then when my daughter or son come to visit, we can have a nice, enjoyable visit, as opposed to my son and daughter come to visit, and they have to hear about the turnover of the on-site team, and the food wasn't as good as it could have been, and my room's not clean. Those things all come from turnover. So the idea that if we create a good work experience, we're allowing that circle of relationships to be what it ought to be, which would be if I came to visit my mother in a senior living community, I would be there to be enjoying my time with her, not to be hearing about the operational issues of the place where she's living. So we're working to avoid that. In terms of the things I mentioned earlier about what we do to create a good place to work, the way that kind of has to get realized is the way we unveil that to the customer. And so we've always been a believer in everybody relates to a story. So the way we try to get that message out there is to have a unique sales story and message at each community that encompasses the culture of that area, the flavor of the internal culture of the community, but in a way that is formalized. So it's not we just make up a story. There is a unique sales story that takes into account who lives in that community, what are the features of that community, and why is it a good place to live, and why is it a good place to work. And that's what we set to educate the customer about after we do our discovery, on a visit at the particular community that they're interested in. And that's difficult, because the reality is it's a personal business, it's up close, it's people's emotions, and there's a tendency to want to go off the reservation. You think you figured somebody out or you get them, so you tend to want to then do it your way as opposed to taking what you've learned and unveiling how what we have can benefit those needs that you've just learned about by way of the unique story of that community. So that is an every single day reinforcement. It always has to be changing so that it's relevant to the people that are living and working there, and it encompasses the features and benefits of the community as they are changing. For instance, as acuity is on the rise in every segment of our business. So now we're caring for somebody who's much more acute than maybe 5 years ago. So my story, what my team has to convey to that adult daughter is how the systems, tools, and processes of our community are now able to help us care for somebody at a higher acuity. And on a personal level, how can you demonstrate that success? And that might be by telling or sharing an anecdote or a story about somebody who was in a similar situation, or even connecting that adult child up with somebody who lives there right at that same time, who's experiencing that same situation, as opposed to going off the reservation, and you even mentioned it earlier, Dave, everybody thinks that they tell. The idea here is that you're in the discovery process and you're trying to unveil the unique sales story of the community based on that discovery.
What I think you were one of the early forerunners of doing some of the marketing intel, to assess your sales team, your marketing team, and all of your activities. And you do that a lot of different ways. I know you have an extensive training program, but talk about how you can see and hear what prospective customers see and hear through mystery shopping and how that's helped your business.
We, as you know, Dave, we do mystery shopping. We used to do it monthly. We now do it quarterly. And we tell our people right up front, even in the interview process, that we do this. And it's not to catch people doing things wrong. Actually, it's the opposite. It's to catch people doing things right, and also to learn what it is we may not know. What is our blind spot? Generally you want to think that everybody that comes to your door is going to be nice and friendly. Well, that's not true, because people are often in emotional distress. And when we're distressed, we aren't our best person usually. So we learned that sometimes the customer's not going to come all tidy in a neat package with a bow, and we're going to have to adjust, and we're going to have to be able to respond. Or we might learn about a staff person who is struggling with the training that we've given. They're trying to use the tools, they're trying to do the discovery, but they just can't seem to get it together. Or we're learning that maybe they come to a standstill and they don't know how to guide the customer to the next step. But in each case, really what we're learning is what we're doing right, what could be improved upon, and then generally what are we learning about the customer that we didn't already know that would help us be better at not only the intake part, the move-in, but actually providing the care once the person does move in. Little hospitality things, having a beverage center, little things that oftentimes you see them somewhere that you go. You'll see some fresh cookies and coffee. I know for myself, it's good feelings. When I see that, I think, oh, I'm going to have one, and I go right over and take one. Well, but you don't think, well, in our own business, gee, wouldn't that make a nice difference? But when we do it, it's the difference between maybe us and the 3 other places that the family looked. What they remembered is, gee, it smelled like the home-baked cookies, and they were really friendly, and they gave me a nice place to sit. And then it starts to become additive, and those mystery shops help us. Aside from that, they help us learn what our places look like in the off hours, on the weekends, maybe when there's not all the management team there and the person who's there is the maintenance person. Is he capable to give a tour? Have we educated him well enough to answer the questions? And what ends up coming from that is, if we do it right, the families like that. They like to know that, you care enough about this that you're educating not only the salesperson, but that everybody on the team is, not a sales expert or not an expert on everything in the business, but capable of articulating who we are, how we do business, and, showing the person around the community in a comfortable way.
While salespeople can be confident, they have to be, because they deal with rejection, they can be very confident. The complexity of salespeople across the board is there's also a lack of confidence and defensiveness. So talk about how mystery shopping can be misperceived by the sales team, and they don't realize that it can be mentoring and coaching.
Well, I think, the one thing cool about the mystery shopping is you have the online audio, and so it's not just somebody giving a score. And, in our case, the criteria are criteria based on our training. So we know that what is being evaluated are the exact things that we trained on. And when there's a question, let's say, we strive for 85% or better. Obviously, over 90 is exceptional. So when somebody gets, let's say, an 80%, that's so close, but not, that's not the goal. So there's a tendency when we get that to want to then go listen and dispute the observations, and sometimes the observations of the shopper might be that, well, hey, the person was not all that patient with me. Or I brought my kid and the kid was running around and your salesperson seemed irritated. So for us, that becomes an opportunity to say, well, people do bring their kids. Sometimes they don't have a choice. And as we know, kids are not all well behaved. So what could we do differently? Is there something we have in the environment that we could use to maybe help occupy the child or have them feel more comfortable while the mom has to visit? So we are willing to go back and listen and try to listen with the person who has, maybe the disagreement about the score. So it's all very transparent. And I think with the transparency over time, people begin to realize that this is not a game, this isn't a gotcha thing. We all want the same thing. So when we get 100%, we're cheering. We're giving bigger bonuses. And if you get more than one, several in a row, the bonuses get larger. So the idea here is performance. So it's really teaching folks that this isn't to punish you. There's no punishment. If in every job there's an expectation of a certain level of performance, and in sales, the end result is the occupancy. If we're effective, if we're using all the tools, the mystery shop's going to reveal what happened in a simulated environment, although the person doesn't know that. What really is going to tell the story if the advice is being taken is the occupancy.
And we watched your methodology work when we began working with you doing shops. We do mystery shops, and we don't do them for Subway, and we don't do them for McDonald's. We're primarily in our areas of specialty, our healthcare, education, some B2B. Not a lot of shopping is done in those spaces. Not because we're brilliant. I'd say probably the opposite, because it's harder. It's harder to make a margin, and it's harder to do that. But we do it because it's part of marketing intel. If we were just a shop business, we'd go out of business. So the people that are doing the Subways, they have to do Subways and they have to do pizza shops because that's their business. We do it because it's a piece of what we do. It's market intel. And when we became, I believe, on the forefront of healthcare shopping, with IntegraCare being basically you and I sat down and decided how to build the shop program that Mass Solutions has honed and that you've used. I've watched your approach work because at the beginning there was so much defensiveness, and many clients, the salespeople, are so defensive that we have to say to them, if the shopper perceived that, that's their perception. You have no debate. That is a potential customer that perceived it that way. It doesn't matter if they're irrational, because my customers are irrational. Mass Solutions customers are irrational. Guess what? When I buy something, I'm irrational. And that I've seen it work with you guys. There used to be a battle. Your people would call us and debate points and everything. And over the last 5 years, that's not been the case. So it's working.
I think it is. And one of the things that comes from it is actually a lesson that's needed is that our primary customer wants somebody that can relate to them. Okay, so the primary decision maker is an adult daughter, on average 50 years of age or older. So let's assume the salesperson is a young person. She's 27. She's, good person, hardworking, wants to do a good job. That adult daughter is going to look at her and say, how could you possibly understand my plight? How could you possibly have something to offer me? And it's not because she's a bad adult daughter. It's because she's in this emotional state. She wants somebody who is going to help her make it better. So for us, it really helped us in terms of our selection. Not that we don't hire, but we're really looking for that person who has the empathy and an open mind about how this job needs to be done, and a desire to learn really about the elderly, as the product, meaning who comes to our door, what are their conditions, why is this daughter so stressed, what other options are out there. So really digging in way deep early on in order to basically have the comfort that's necessary not only for yourself but for the person you're trying to speak with. And not everybody is willing to do that. So it's really helped us in our selection process and then also in the training process in terms of how we ready that new hire to do that job, which is really, although it's a sales job, it's a counselor. It's somebody who's counseling and helping someone make a decision at a very difficult time emotionally.
So Loriann, pick a tool or tip you'd offer that'll help our audience tell their story, craft their message, or communicate to internal and external audiences. It could be a tool like Google Trends to generate content ideas. your favorite book, blog, or productivity resource, or a tip on how to approach their career. Whatever you think might help our listeners.
Actually, I have two things. One is basically it's a simple thing, but it's huge, and that is to have several clipping services that are related to your industry directly and indirectly. So, for instance, the clipping services that I use are tagging articles on the financial world related to my business. What's happening on Wall Street? What are the big players doing? What are the analysts saying about our industry? Closer to home, what are the healthcare trends? What are hospitals in our market doing? What are the hospital trends related to senior living? What are the senior living environmental trends? Because the world is changing in terms of the physical plant. And then technology in general, not senior living technology, but where's technology going in the world? Because the reality is the world isn't going to go in one direction and your business is going to stay stagnant. So you have to be thinking about these things as to how do these advances affect your business and how ultimately are you going to be incorporating them. And part of that thinking in my mind is not having the fear. And the way I try to keep myself current is just by reading and keeping up with what's out there. So that's my kind of educational trend.
Walk through the. If someone listens and says, "Okay, I want to try to start that right now," get more specific on the clipping service. Like, give an example of how they might do it.
So you could use Google Alerts, or every industry has its bloggers, and I think no matter who you are, all you have to do is even Google that, and they'd all come up. What I have done over time is gone through what comes through by just Googling the terms and figured out where my favorites are. On the financial side, there are industry favorites, and I know which ones of those tend to provide the information that relates best to me. So I've chosen those to get the alerts from those clipping services. And then on the technology ones, believe it or not, I belong to two groups, and there are two guys that are in my groups who often will recommend those on the technology side because that's not my area of expertise. So I religiously follow their recommendations, and I guess that goes to being willing to ask others and take advice of others. So what I do, and I don't suggest everybody do this, but I get up at 4 a.m. every day. I have for a long time. I use that first hour and I ferret through that stuff. So you can't read a ton of things in an hour, but you can peruse quite a few, and then that kind of gets me going for the day. And when I get to work, I know I'm not going to do that because I feel like I shouldn't be doing that. There's so many other things to be doing. So it gives me that routine of looking at those things every single day. And I guess the second point I would have, which was something I didn't see as a blind spot until recently, when somebody said it, and it's true, is that when you rely on your wisdom, because your success builds your wisdom. So let's say that I feel like we've been fairly successful, fairly fortunate, then the wisdom I've gained from all those years is what's going to basically be my mindset moving forward. So you think, well, hey, these certain things have served me well, served us well for all these years, so they're going to be good moving forward. And when you start thinking that way, it is an arrogance. You don't see it as an arrogance, but it is. You start discounting things like current technologies because you think, well, I don't need it. This is a low-tech business. It's relationships. It's face-to-face. How could all of this technology help me? Well, one of the things that I'm learning in my business is it helps us be more efficient. So what does efficiency do? It helps me retain staff. Staff retention is the name of the game in the future. And if my staff feel like I'm investing in things that make their job better, then they're going to probably think better of us as an employer and give us a second look when somebody's trying to recruit them away. Whereas I could say, well, all those HR things I talked about earlier, we're going to continue doing that, and that's going to help us retain. Well, we're going to have to do better than that, and maybe that incorporates bringing something in that's uncomfortable. So it's, knowing what about your wisdom can serve you well moving forward, but not letting your wisdom become an arrogance or a blind spot, because that's when you start going backwards.
Some excellent tools and tips from Loriann Putzier, the president and co-founder of IntegraCare Corporation. So Loriann, it's time to keep calm and hit the bullseye. I'll ask you to choose between two marketing or messaging classics. You tell me which one you like more, but you only have a few seconds to choose and hit the bullseye. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Now, full disclosure, ladies and gentlemen, John Putzier has been on the show. And he was a fantastic guest, and he hit the bullseye quite well. And he's put the challenge out there to Loriann, his better half. So you think you can live up to John's challenge?
I think I can.
All right.
I've made it this far.
That was some serious BS I just laid on everybody. All right. Geico's gecko or the Aflac duck?
The Aflac duck.
Lexus, the relentless pursuit of perfection, or BMW, the ultimate driving machine?
BMW.
Google or Apple?
Apple.
Don't leave home without it, or priceless?
Priceless.
Progressive's Flow or Jake from State Farm?
Jake from State Farm.
Lay's Bet You Can't Eat Just One, or Doritos for the Bold?
Doritos for the bold.
Hotels.com's Captain Obvious or Priceline's William Shatner?
Priceline's William Shatner.
I'm Loving It or Have It Your Way?
I'm loving it.
The $6 Million Man or the most interesting man in the world?
The most interesting man in the world.
She went right through them. Let's go back. Let's go back and talk about them. So you chose the Aflac duck.
I did.
And?
More current, sense of humor, and as I think about our whole show, messaging, that message has been consistent. It resonates. It evokes an image, and I think that's what they're trying to accomplish.
You went with BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Those are two both great slogans.
The ultimate driving machine, I think, speaks to a state of mind of the consumer, the experience. It evokes an emotion, and I think it's an emotional sale. It's a luxury vehicle. I mean, the person buying it doesn't have to have it, so it's more appealing from an emotional standpoint.
How'd you make the call between Google and Apple?
Approach to innovation. And maybe I would say more about the messaging, the launch, the anticipation. I guess that's really the word I'm looking for, anticipation.
You went with Priceless.
The Priceless campaign, you see it in all kinds of jokes, you see it online, and it's funny because it's kind of created anything that's kind of off the wall, out of the ordinary, can then be the subject of a priceless, again, one word, but evokes a reaction.
You went with the newcomer, the rising star Jake from State Farm.
Kind of a strange stoicism, I guess, with that one, and that's why I chose it.
On the Lay's and the Doritos, which one did you go with?
I went with the Doritos.
For the bold.
For the bold, yes. I think if you had to, if you're looking at the average person and how they see themselves, the only, can only have just one. Oh well, that's been around. But everybody likes to see themselves as an adventurer, the bold. And I think if you were trying to relate to somebody on a word, bold would be the one.
Like bold solutions, no BS might be
exactly. Could be, yes. A little self-serving there, Dave.
And you went with Priceline's William Shatner?
Yes. And that one, I have to admit, I'm just a William Shatner fan. I was the queen of Captain Kirk. When I was a child, I used to kiss the television set when I watched Star Trek. So I chose merely on that premise.
Did you like Boston Legal or whatever?
I did.
That was a good show, too.
That was a good show. I was disappointed when it went off the air.
He carried that, too. Not just him, but it was a good show. And I'm Loving It or Have It Your Way.
I'm loving it. It's about the joy of life.
But you didn't go with Steve Austin, the $6 million man. You went with the most interesting man in the world.
Right. I'd rather go with the most interesting, which kind of says there's a sense of curiosity. Money is money, but curiosity and interest are what make the world go round.
That was our Hit the Bullseye, and Loriann, I think you might have outdid John. We'll just have to see. So we're continuing our pop culture segments. This episode's Sights and Sounds of Marketing starts with the song Every Day is Exactly the Same by 9 Inch Nails from the year 2005. Before I get into the song, Suzanne Mayer, our producer, actually went to school with Trent Reznor. Come on, give it up. Give it up. Trent Reznor, the basically the driving force behind 9 Inch Nails, the writer, producer, singer. And Suzanne dated Trent Reznor.
I didn't date Trent Reznor.
Suzanne was engaged to Trent Reznor. It's going to be all over the blogosphere. Suzanne Mayer was engaged to Trent Reznor. She broke his heart. That's why he's so jaded.
That's what it is.
So the song starts like this. I believe I can see the future because I repeat the same routine. Far too often work becomes repetitive and mundane, the same old, same old. His next line is, I think I used to have a purpose, but then again, that might have been a dream. Loriann's talked about that today, about how there's an excitement of a new position or a new project, but it wears off. Where's the passion go? I think I used to have a voice, now I never make a sound. Part of the problem comes from the lack of appropriate communication throughout the organization. Loriann has emphasized how every employee needs to get individual recognition. In some instances, employees are encouraged to speak up, but they ignore the opportunity, so it's on them. I can feel their eyes are watching in case I lose myself again. Senior leaders are often guilty of perpetuating a culture that focuses more on mistakes and those who speak out than creative thinking and discussion. I just do what I've been told. I really don't want them to come around. Now think about that statement from a management standpoint. I just do what I've been told. I really don't want them to come around. It leads to a dysfunctional workplace where flying under the radar and taking the safe route are culturally accepted norms. And we've talked about some organizations where that was the culture. I'm still inside here. A little bit comes bleeding through. Every now and then, though, something excites you and you show your zeal for work again, but it doesn't last. Sometimes I think I'm happy here, sometimes yet I still pretend. Instead of trying to convince yourself things are okay, focus on how things could be. I wish this could have been any other way, but I just don't know. I don't know what else I can do. What you can do is you can be honest with yourself. I can't remember how this got started, but I can tell you exactly how it will end. If you're the frustrated employee, do the necessary soul searching to pinpoint the type of work or company that will inspire you. If you're the leader, change your focus and do what Loriann preaches for IntegraCare to do with focusing on the employee, the camaraderie, the relationship. Develop a plan to make it your reality. Otherwise, you'll be able to see the future but feel like you're watching reruns. Loriann, your thoughts on the theme of every day is exactly the same.
Oh, well, every day is exactly the same as exactly the opposite of the way I see the world, and I think exactly the opposite of the way we set to have the culture in our company. And I would say that someone with that mindset, the two things that stand out to me would be lost engagement and lost curiosity. If there's an engagement, that's the spark of, being drawn back in, and, never losing your sense of curiosity, the why behind something, the could it be different, could I try something different, and being willing to articulate that. And I think that's incumbent upon the leadership of a company to engage, to have a transparent culture where that level of engagement is possible, as opposed to a culture of shut up and do your job, which there are many cultures that are in companies that are still like that. Ours is one of the engagement and curiosity, and ironically, there's a self-selection out of the company for people that would rather be in that, can I just do my job and not have to be a part of this? So it could be that it's the same every day, but it's a matter of what you choose to make it.
And in this case, lost engagement actually has a double meaning, because Trent Reznor was this upbeat, positive guy in college, and then Suzanne broke the engagement. He became this gloom and doom naysayer, but it worked for him. He
could sing about it.
He could sing about it. And Suzanne's just beside herself. She went to college with Trent. The rest of it's just been made up by me.
Thank you.
Other sights and sounds of 2005, the year in which Every Day is Exactly the Same was released. 2005, Dove's campaign for real beauty attempts to set a more realistic standard for attractiveness. Do you remember that campaign?
Vaguely.
Well, it was the one where Dove, I believe, really struck a PR approach to it. They built the campaign and then promoted it from a PR standpoint, saying, we are going to show women of all types of shapes, sizes, looks, and that real beauty is not this defined beauty of the Barbie doll. So from a PR standpoint, it was really smart because they received so much coverage of the campaign. And if it was for altruistic reasons, that's great too, because real beauty is many different forms, not just Barbie or Trent Reznor. Remember, Loriann was a journalism PR practitioner early in her career in college. Well, she remembered in 2005 that Ted Koppel retired from Nightline and Dan Rather from CBS Evening News in a matter of weeks, I think. Two of the biggest names of our time growing up on air. Which of those two do you like the most or least?
I like Dan Rather the most. And actually his image is is an image that I would think of when thinking of journalism. I felt like he was the end of an era of what I thought back then compared to now was what I called true journalism. It was a reporting of the situation, a reporting of the facts, where now it's all sound bites. And that type of reporting, live, real, transparent, it's not there anymore.
Agreed. And it's no longer about getting the story, get it right, and get it first. It's now just get something bad out there.
Right.
And
it's disappointing.
It is disappointing. But something that wasn't disappointing was YouTube was created by 3 PayPal employees after they had difficulty sharing videos shot at a dinner party.
Good for them.
But think about how it ties to what you were talking about, the camaraderie of being together. Now, granted, they were at a dinner party,
Yeah.
but they're working at another internet startup that's becoming huge and making them all millionaires. They're at a dinner party and they're doing something and they get frustrated and they had the creativity and the camaraderie to turn it into the biggest thing other than Google search, the biggest thing in the last 20 years.
It's again, I think it's still the power of connectivity, power of relationships, and somebody who will agree, somebody who's going to try it with you, who doesn't think you're crazy.
Yes.
And if you don't have that, you're never going to push your limits and test what's possible.
Sights and Sounds are from 2005. Career Builder's Monkeys ad campaign is designed to appeal to people frustrated in their work rather than those already looking for new jobs. So it was a different messaging approach for headhunters and HR and recruitment and retention. It was saying, let's not go for the person out of work. Let's try to convince someone who's frustrated to do what we just said during Every Day is Exactly the Same, is if it's not a fit, get out of there. What do you think about that Monkeys ad campaign from 2005 for Career Builders?
I actually think that's effective and thought it was effective. I mean, I don't know what results came from it, but when you're looking for when you're attracting the actively unemployed, there could be good people there, but there also may be a reason that person's unemployed. And within an organization, there's always, at any given point in time, someone who is, I'll use the word disgruntled, but maybe just dissatisfied, just maybe based on something at a point in time. And that campaign was designed to reach that person. That could be a very good person who's working very hard, but maybe not liking a cultural change, an initiative, and that person could potentially be a very great employee for somebody else.
In 2005, Google introduces Google Maps.
Oh my. I remember that. That was like, I can remember everybody getting around the computer looking at it, oohing and awing over it, like, how can they do this? How is this possible? And actually, we just looked at them recently at a meeting like a week ago, and as we were zooming in, everybody in the room was still saying that.
I do remember exactly what you're saying. Whenever you would go and click on your own house,
click
on somebody else's building, and you'd go, oh!
Oh, now, when you zero right in, and you get right down to the mailbox on the property, like, ooh, that's a little too close.
Exactly. And Cyber Monday officially becomes a shopping day on the Monday after Thanksgiving when retailers target online shoppers who are at work shopping. Suzanne, Loriann, have you guys done the Cyber Monday thing?
I have. I must admit, guilty. Yes. Now, not. I have to say that I wasn't in line with the statistics that I heard on the news that the average employee working an 8-hour day on Cyber Monday would spend 4 hours online. So I was not going to spend 50% of my time, and was choosing optimistically believe that our workforce wasn't either, but I'll take the blissful ignorance if that's the case.
So, Loriann, you've been a fantastic guest. How can listeners contact you if they'd like to learn more about what you do?
You can contact me at through our website, www.integracare.com, or through our office phone number, which is 724-940-5544, and that's IntegraCare Corporation.
Great. Loriann, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It was a good time. And thanks for joining us for the No Bullshit Marketing Podcast. Visit nobullshitmarketing.biz for show notes, plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Are you signed up for light reading? You'll receive valuable strategies every other week to improve your marketing and transform your message. It really is light, intended to be read in 2 minutes or less, and it just might trigger bright ideas for you. To sign up, visit masssolutions.biz. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions.